We have more today than kings and queens of yesteryears. And yet we are actually not happier. We are constantly looking for more, because our brains operate on this principle of a hedonic treadmill. You can compare yourself to the person ahead of you. Or you can compare yourself to the thousands who you are actually doing better than.
Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. Today we have a guest who is going to bring a smile on your face. Literally a smile on your face. Because he belongs to the happiness squad. And never ever have I seen him frowning. He's one person who instantly delights me with his daily quotes on LinkedIn. He's a person who instantly delights me with lessons in life. But this person has gone through a very incredible journey. His name is Ashish Kothari and he is the founder and the mastermind behind Happiness Squad, and we'll talk about his latest book, Hardwired for Happiness. When I listen to a topic like that, Hardwired for Happiness, I want to go back and ask myself, what am I hardwired for? Am I hardwired for money? Am I hardwired for social status? Or am I really hardwired for being myself? I have taken the plunge few years ago and Ashish is doing it now in a big way. He's an industry leader from McKinsey, Deloitte. He's held amazingly successful positions in the industry, but he gives it all up to do what? To bring about happiness. Without further ado, let's bring on Ashish Kothari, our monk, our happiness leader, our guru on Pitch Cafe podcast. Truly an honor. Welcome Ashish. Welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast.
Thank you for having me, Vida. And thank you for such a warm welcome and your kind words. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. When I met you for the first time, we met as authors, and little did I know that you are going to grip me into this fantastic world of happiness, personal well-being. And if you look at large corporate organizations, their productivity depends on employee well-being. So let's start with you. Who is Ashish Kothari? With such an amazing, successful industry background, I believe you had a lot of success in even financially. Why did you give it up?
So listen, first of all, who is Ashish? Vida, first and foremost, I am a father of a 12-year-old. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I live in Boulder, Colorado. Listen, all the professional successes, the money, all of that stuff, they're just, titles. But in the essence, these are things that really fill me up with joy. And, to answer your question, I grew up in India. And I, at the age of 42, had frankly checked off all those boxes that I picked up in the script on things that I had to do in order to reach success and through success achieve happiness. Okay? It's a constant myth that we live into. If we are successful, we'll be happy. And I had done that, and I had done that in spades, right? At 42, I had been a partner already at McKinsey for about 5 years. I was happily married. I had a lovely son. We were living in Boulder. I was much in demand with my clients. I was already 12 years at McKinsey, a firm I love, absolutely loved, my colleagues, the environment in which I grew. And so by all external measures, Vida, I should have been, super happy, satisfied with life. Okay. And that was true, right? I experienced joy. For sure, I experienced joy. But what I would say is I wasn't joyful, which means when I won I had won a new client engagement, I got an accolade, we went on a nice vacation, we got our bonuses, I got promoted. There were moments where I go, yes, right? And I'm like top of the world. But then you would go back to kind of more of a state of just, how are you? I'm okay. Okay. So that's what I mean by I experienced joy, but I wasn't joyful. More importantly, what was also happening to me was I had found myself every morning waking up with a very high degree of anxiety. And I actually couldn't even point why. Nothing was wrong. And yet I was anxious. And it was this actually yearning. It was these whispers of, hey, there is something off, that actually took me, on the paths of spirituality, psychology, and neurosciences to kind of basically self-diagnose. Why am I anxious? Why am I not satisfied? What am I really worried about? And, once I started on that journey and the wisdom and what I learned, and things that I did to kind of change my way of being, I felt compelled to actually take this and apply it and take it to everybody else, because I could also see from my own suffering that I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
Right? This was I was sharing this with so much of a part of humanity, my own peers, colleagues, people who are in high performance roles.
Yeah.
They were feeling the same.
So tell me, Ashish, what is this whole, let's break down the myth. What is happiness and why is it hard for people to be happy? I know being happy is as simple as that, but the anxiety syndrome which you talk about, 90% of me and my peer circle, they're going through. Why is it? What is happiness? Tell us all about it.
Look, happiness by its very, if you look at the scientific, by the way, there is a science of happiness, right? Like that folks like Marty Seligman, Tal Ben-Shahar, Sonia Lyubomirsky, Emma Seppala, so many others, right, have spent their careers over the last 10, 15, 20 years looking from a research point of view at what makes us happy. And of course, you have thousands of years of spiritual wisdom that is all about living a particular way of being. But listen, what I found, that to your question about, despite all this research and despite all this wisdom, why are we not happier?
Exactly.
We are more prosperous as a generation that we've ever been, Vida, right? We have more today than kings and queens of yesteryears. And yet we are actually not happier. We are more stressed. We are lonelier. So why? And what I found, and this is at the heart of my book, is what I found is the reason we are not there is because our brains are wired for fear. Our brains that actually took us to the top of the food chain, despite not being the strongest and the largest, have actually turned against us. So what do I mean by that? Right? Why is it? What happens? We are actually hardwired for fear. We are hardwired for fear because our brains evolved, Vida, to guard us against, predatory threats. They evolved as predominant prediction-making mechanisms to keep our bodies safe and secure. Okay?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that.
There is nothing wrong with that because, frankly, without that, we wouldn't have survived.
Exactly.
What has happened, though, is in the last 20,000 years, once we settle down, the world we are living in, Vida, doesn't resemble the millions of years of evolution of this amazing organ. So what do I mean by that? Look, first, there are no predatory threats around us. That millions of years of evolution made this brain into like an amazing engine to predict. But what do we have instead? What we have instead is a world we have created through our intelligence that is more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, continuously changing, right? And we fail to control it, and hence we get triggered multiple times in a day. We actually face psychological threats all day long. Things aren't going the way we want, right? Absolutely. And that's where lies the problem, because our brains have no way of differentiating physical threat from psychological threats, okay? So that's the first issue, that our environment is fundamentally changed. The second issue is the response is the issue. Flight, fright, response, right? Flight or fight response, which is so adapted for physical threats. Amazing, right? We either fight it or we're going to run away. Completely fail us for a psychological threat. If I see you, Vida, as something that as a threat, it's not a real threat, but I need to be able to connect with you. I need to be able to understand you. And in that moment, our adrenaline and cortisol fueled bodies, they fail us because our brains, right? Amygdala hijack is a term Daniel Goleman termed. Our prefrontal cortex, our decision making, our thinking part of the brain literally goes offline. And we experience it multiple times. So that's the issue. And then the third issue is our bodies start to break down. Look, our bodies are designed for stress. They're not designed for getting stressed 8 times in a day with no coping in the middle. And that is the issue we are actually facing as humanity and as leaders, especially those who are founders, who are CEOs, who are leaders leading large teams. In our world today, when we have that high level of psychological threats and uncertainty, we are constantly running in a mode of trigger. We are constantly at risk, if not already burnt out. And that's why we are not happy.
And I remember this baboon trap experiment by a professor at Stanford University, and he did exactly the same kind of analysis as you were saying. And what is the solution for this? You work with large organizations, you mentioned C-level executives. How can we bring down these number of triggers, and why is it causing a breakdown? Why can't we handle that? I'm on social media. I'm kind of an influencer as well, like yourself. I do get these impulses, positive, negative, when a comment goes off here and there, I do worry about it. But really, what is the crux of the issue? Why is it happening today?
I think your question about look with organizations, I think this is an imperative.
Yeah.
Look, individuals, we know those who are happier are healthier, they are more creative, they are more adaptable, they are more resilient, they are more innovative. In fact, we can look at the research that says success, arrow, happiness is wrong. Actually, it's not the successful people who are happier. It's the happier people who are successful, because we are kinder, we are more creative, right? We are more generous. We are seen as more charismatic. So individually, it's a big deal. But frankly, organizationally, it's an even bigger deal.
Yep.
So if you look at the data from Gallup, if you look at the data from Oxford, if you look at the data from Warwick, companies where employees flourish, where they are happier, have 2x the stock market return.
Yeah.
They are 20% more profitable. They are 30%, 12 to 30% more productive. They are 3x more creative and 65% lower attrition workplaces. Okay? Fundamentally, powerful. And listen, I will tell you this. One of the core issues that we run into, and I would advise your listeners, right, to not do. Oftentimes we go into, okay, how can corporations change? How can our environment change so we don't get triggered? My invitation is, look, we can't control the external, but what we can do is master our inner worlds. And so what I would invite is to consider a different question, which is, how can I prepare myself to be able to swim, to be able to float amongst any water I find? Okay, that is step number one in a journey. Step number one is, how do we master our inner world? Step number two is, from that place of mastery, how do we shape the environment, because we are part of it, to make a difference, right? If we start outside, it never works. So we gotta start inside and then from there go out.
Yeah. So Ashish, there are two things here coming out of whatever you just discussed. An organization is a very complex environment to work with. Lots of dynamics are going on. Now you talked about this inside out theory, but in our past conversations you mentioned people who try to be happy tend to be unhappier. That is one thing. Another thing is, I had done this workshop at Salesforce, but this was more on purpose in life. There, when I tried to propose this theory that you got to be happy inside to spread happiness outside, they said no, you're supposed to seek a community. Now I'm a little bit confused here. One is about, why are people seeking happiness unhappy? Second thing is, how to convince people about this inside out mechanism, because it's not intuitive to most people. They seek community. They want to go and crib somewhere.
100%. So look, I will help. So first of all, you're spot on. Research clearly supports that, right? Those who pursue happiness are unhappier because they are solving. The pivot I would shift is, what I would support is, happiness is actually something that ensues. You can't pursue it. But happiness ensues by, integrating these 9 practices that I talked about. Now, these 9 practices, Vida, fundamentally work because they rewire our brains. Okay, let me walk you through what they are. Community, by the way, is a big one. Community is one of the practices. Man is a social animal.
Yeah.
And in the end, right, I'll break it down. If you take a step back and you said, if you are living a life of meaning, right, you're living a life pursuing what you're doing because you love it, you're good at it, and it's something that the world needs, right? So you're pursuing your ikigai. You are physically, mentally, spiritually, from a well-being point of view, in a good place. You actually enjoy a rich community that you nourish and that nourishes you.
Yeah.
And fourth is, you have truly learned how to master your own emotions. And what I mean by that is, really learned how to not let anger, anxiety, resentment, shame, guilt pull you down, but at the same time, use the power of positive emotions like gratitude, kindness, compassion to create positive energy. If you're doing these things, you will actually be happier. Okay. And so my notion in this framework is all around teaching people the practices that if they integrate into their life, happiness ensues. My work is not to teach people to pursue happiness. It is only you get indirect as an effect.
So tell me, Ashish, if I follow your practices and if I make all those practices a habit, is it more likely that I will be more successful, or let's say I'll be more happy, I'll be happier and I'll be successful?
100%. I think you will be happier. And through that being a happier person, you will be more successful because these practices implicitly will drive more success. You know why? I'll break it down very simply. Because the practice about pursuing your ikigai, Okay. If you're truly doing something, Vida, look, there's so many people out there who are working a job. It doesn't bring them joy, but it's just a way. They say, I'm going to work here so I can earn a living, so I'll be happy when I'm not working. Okay. Now imagine if you're working on something you love that you're good at.
Yeah.
What happens? You are mostly in a state of flow. You love it. You put your best effort into it. You enjoy it, right? And you continue to get better and better at it.
Yeah.
And if this, by the way, also is something that the world needs and is willing to pay for, you can write your own paycheck with that. You are on a path of expertise and mastery. Okay?
Yeah.
Really, really huge. I'll give you another example of how these practices help you be more successful. If you take the practice, for example, of kindness and compassion, right? And by the way, kindness and compassion equally, there's a big part of compassion, which is self-compassion, self-care. So if you are embodying this practice, you will be generous, but not generous to a fault. Adam Grant's work on give and take, that you will be a giver with boundaries because you're grounded in self-consciousness.
I love that. I love that concept. You're not only self-preserving, but you raise your energy so high that you can go beyond that and give. So you're self-preserving. You're not sacrificing yourself.
You're not sacrificing. Really, really important, because you know what he found in his research, Adam Grant, was those who are givers show up in the highest number of people who succeed, but also make up the highest number of people who are not successful. And what differentiates the two is, do you have boundaries? So do you actually care? Are you self-compassionate? Do you have your own boundaries? Do you care about yourself? Right? But that's how this makes you be successful, because people want to be with Vida, who is always giving generously.
Yeah, and also I should take my time to make sure I rejuvenate myself so I can give. Now, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, even today it's the holy grail of success and happiness and purpose.
Yes.
How do we achieve self-actualization with your 9-point framework? So I'll just read out. Your 9-point framework starts with self-awareness, defining purpose, embracing mindful living, practicing gratitude, mastering emotions, fueling compassion, investing in well-being, building a community, and living intentionally. So this is Ashish Kothari's 9-point framework in happiness, Hardwired for happiness. And tell us, how does this map to Maslow's hierarchy?
Great question. So Vida, I always say, right, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, the lower levels are all about physical safety, security, right? Community, which is social, shows up as number 3. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like self-actualization at the top. Our problem is our current world, our hardwiring for fear.
Yes.
Even when we have met the first couple of layers.
Yeah.
Keep us unaware that we have actually met them. I have this question. I had a conversation with somebody who is a very successful investment banker. Okay. Really, really, he has millions of dollars. He is in late 40s. And I was having a conversation with him as somebody I was coaching. And he's like, I am really stressed. I'm struggling. He was going through a hard time in his relationships. And I asked him, I said, listen, do you have enough when it comes to wealth? I always talk about this 4-part framework in my book. Okay. At any point, think about how much wealth, health, love, and meaning. 4 dials: wealth, health, love, and meaning. Where are you?
Yeah.
And so I asked him, because I was asking him, why don't you do something different? And he said, I can't. I said, why can't you? He's like, I can't. I said, well, let's look at this, right? So how much wealth do you really need? Because you say, you can't, I have to do this job, I have to work these hours, I have to travel as much as I have to. You're saying these can'ts because without it, I don't do what? He's like, I don't make enough money. I said, well, let's think, how much money do you need?
Yeah.
Okay. And when he looked at it, he's like, yeah, actually, I'm more than enough. And this is, you know what I mean? But we get stuck in it. Same's the story with things. Because of our brains, we are constantly looking for more, because our brains operate on this principle of a hedonic treadmill, which is whatever we have, all of a sudden stops actually fueling us.
I love that, Ashish. The last time you mentioned that to me, you said our brain really optimizes the most wonderful things in life. Like, look at the sunlight in your room. It's a delight. Every time when I talk to you, I'm just so thankful for sunlight. We take it for granted. When the skies went orange during the forest fire in California, I craved for a, north sky. There are floods in Bangalore, the city I grew up in, and people are going around in boats. I'm like, I'm thankful that I could walk, normal.
Exactly. exactly, right? I mean, our brain, literally, whatever we have today
Yeah.
stops being exciting, but it was something we wanted 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? But the moment we get it, we're like, yeah, on to the next thing. That's how our brains are wired. So if we are aware of that,
Yeah, aware that we are on a hedonic treadmill and be mindful and say, hey, I got to slow down a little bit.
you have to slow down a lot, right? And the other thing, so these two practices work simultaneously, right? Vida, of the ones that you read. So mindfulness and gratitude.
Yeah.
Let's take both of them together.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, a really, really important practice because, our brains, right? All the research shows us we have a wandering brain. We have a wandering mind. We have made it even more so over the last 20 years because of all of the Facebook and Instagram, right? There used to be times where we used to just be able to kind of be, but now we're like, constantly checking, right, our devices. So our brain is not used to kind of just being with what we're doing.
Yeah, it's confused who we are. Our digital layer
Exactly.
part of us, which it is not, because we don't have control over digital layer.
We don't have it, and the problem is our brain is constantly in two modes. Either it's in the past,
Yes.
reliving our resentments, our failures, and all that,
Yes.
or we are in the future,
Yes.
continuously generating anxiety.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it's rarely in the present, to your moment, just being in the moment. And because when we are truly in the moment, there's some beautiful things that start happening. We truly start to actually appreciate everything that we have around us, right? And that's why I think this and gratitude go really, really well together in fundamentally giving us a different experience, okay? So when we are in the present moment, what starts to appear? So first of all, to your point, you start to notice everything that's great about you, right?
Absolutely.
Gratitude, we can actually develop eyes through a gratitude practice to always be grounded in the abundance we are. And I love the 2 or 3 things you even said, Vida, right? Sunlight.
Yes.
We never think about it unless we consciously remember those days when we didn't have it, right? Every day.
Yeah.
I'll give you this example. I always talk about this. When was the last time you were grateful that you could see?
Yes.
There's billions, right, who can't see. Their biggest wish in life would be that one day they could see.
My God.
Or the fact that we could hear.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If something happened to you, right? Something went wrong. Let's say you stubbed your toe.
Yeah.
Most people will go around all day complaining about the fact that their toe is hurting because they stubbed it.
Yes.
They completely forget that they actually have a toe on a foot. A lot of people don't have a foot.
Yeah.
You have a foot, hence it's hurting.
Yeah. So, you're giving such amazing metaphors on how easy happiness can be. It's just some metaphor we need to remember and reposition.
Yeah, and it's in this gratitude, right? If we are mindful, Vida, it's just about who you compare, right? And by the way, even in suffering, this can be a huge. So Dalai Lama teaches this, right? In the Book of Joy, he gave this example. But I'll talk about first comparison. You can compare yourself to the person ahead of you.
Yeah.
Or you can compare yourself to the thousands who you are actually doing better than.
Yeah.
Okay? I think, and that's a really, really powerful one because we can always be grateful. We should strive to continue get better. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting we just sit where we are. But we don't have to continually compare to others who have more than us to feel bad. We can actually be grateful for how much we have.
Yeah.
And even in suffering, this is the teaching from Dalai Lama that I love, right? So Dalai Lama was being rushed to the hospital and his appendicitis, I think, had burst or he had pain in his stomach. And even in that extreme suffering, he brought to his mind so many others who might in that moment also be having the same pain. And he felt one with them rather than go, why did I deserve this? Why am I in so much pain? I am so holy, And in that moment of suffering, because it was a shared suffering, he experienced a little bit of lightness because the whole mind, stops going about why me? Why now? This is so much. Pain is very much a physical thing, but suffering is mental. Suffering is psychological.
I love that idea. So much of the suffering we face and feel is definitely mental. And this is a fantastic example. Dalai Lama's example is truly amazing. You're feeling one with people who have the same kind of pain. So it's like a community and being one with something is a joy.
Yes. We are
Transcendent.
not alone. We're connected, right? So in every moment, and I think this is what these practices do, Vida. And my whole work, look, I didn't create these practices, okay? I'm the first to say, and that's, by the way, not the purpose of Happiness Squad. So I didn't create these practices. They've been around for thousands of years. I also didn't do research around them to show why they work, right? Like that was done by amazing people like Kristen Neff through all of her self-compassion work, or John Kabat-Zinn and all his work on mindfulness, okay? There is so much work that has been done to prove that they work.
Yeah.
My goal and my hope through my work that I'm doing with Happiness Squad is to actually take people from awareness,
Yeah.
which, I would say 30-40% people are aware holistically around these things, to practice, which less than 10% actually do, to fundamental integration, right? So go from knowing to doing to fundamentally transform our way of being.
Yeah. So make it a habit, make it a lifestyle rather than just, doing it one off and then, falling.
Exactly. And it's about these practices, and it is the outcome of these will be happiness. So my point is, don't go and do things because of happiness and make that your goal. The goal should be to integrate these, and exactly the words. How do we make these into our habits?
Yeah.
So this is how we see the world. This is how we move around. And the beauty of that is you don't need the word to change for that. And Ace Lenn's beautiful teaching, we see the world as we are, not as the world is.
I know. This is, we see the world through the filter of our thoughts, our mental models, our
moods.
Past. Yes.
Our moods, what we hold in our bodies. You're exactly right, Vida. And I think that is the opportunity. And organizations, coming back to your question, the beauty is any organization, if you're a founder and you're running a team, if you're a CEO and you're running a company, if you're even just a team leader and you've got a team of 10 to 15, the beauty is that community can engage collectively around the practices in my book and the offerings that I'm creating to do the journey together. Provide the accountability, inspiration, support, get into a repetition where we help each other, pick each other up when we fall off the path. Right? And collectively, we actually change our way of being.
This is fantastic. So Ashish, thank you so much for this amazing holistic view of happiness. I have so many questions answered, so many unusual insights. I think even just listening to this podcast is transcending me to a whole new level. I can only imagine what your book can do and what can happen, or the change you can bring about with Happiness Squad. So I want to wrap up with one question. What's next for Ashish Kothari and what's lined up for Happiness Squad?
Great question. Thank you, Vida. So first of all, the book launches October 11th. Your listeners can go to the website happiness-squad.com where they can get notified when the book is available. I'll also send you a link to kind of circulate amongst your, people who are listening, where they can actually go ahead of time and also download some exciting things like, a backsplash of all of these practices, etc., including a couple of other things there that I've hidden for them to discover. We are actually building 3 very different programs that will all be available in the coming months and years, okay?
Fantastic.
So first, we're actually launching a podcast which will come alive around Christmas. So that's something people can look forward to. We are also launching a masterclass in March. It's, March 21st is, I think, the World Happiness Day. And so I think on that day, we're going to launch this masterclass. And then we're also launching some retreat-based offerings and organizational offerings. And people can learn about that in the coming days on my website. But listen, for me, my mission, Vida, is to be able to touch 1 billion lives over my lifetime and to really help people fundamentally rewire their brains to be able to live with more joy, more health, with more love and more meaning in their lives. And through that, unlock their full potential.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on that note, signing off Pitch Cafe podcast with Ashish Kothari, impacting 1 billion lives to unlock their true potential to live joyfully and to live wholeheartedly. Thank you, Ashish, for this amazing podcast. We look forward to your book, and all of you guys, please check out happiness-squad.com and sign up for the next exciting update from Ashish Kothari. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vida. Thank you for having me.